Greetings, I'm Yvonne, staff for Science for the Public, and I welcome you to Contemporary Science Issues and Innovations. Our guest today is Dr. Arjun Dey, astronomer at the National Optical-Infrared Astronomy Research Laboratory, better known as NOIRLab. He's a 2021 Guggenheim Fellow and a core member of the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument, better known as DESI project, which he will describe for us today. Dr. Dey's research focus is on the formation and evolution of galaxies and what these processes might reveal about dark energy and dark matter. Dr. Dey's research focus is on the formation and evolution of galaxies and what those processes might reveal about dark matter and dark energy. His expertise is especially important for the DESI project, which will produce the largest map of the universe ever undertaken, tens of millions of galaxies and quasars in 3D. Dr. Dey will explain how DESI will contribute to the understanding of dark energy and the accelerating expansion of the universe. We are very pleased to welcome Dr. Arjun Dey. Dr. Dey, thank you so much for joining us today, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you, Yvonne, for the opportunity to describe an international effort to map the universe in unprecedented detail. The DESI project is the focus of an international collaboration spanning 4 continents and is one of the most amazing cosmographic projects ever undertaken, cosmographic mapping projects ever undertaken. So the DESI project is taking place at Kitt Peak National Observatory, which is located on the mountain shown on the slide. It's a mountain called Yolgam Duag. It's on the ancestral lands of the Tohono O'odham Nation, and it's about 60 miles from Tucson, Arizona. The Mayall telescope is the telescope here on the right with a silver dome, and it hosts the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument, which has just begun this survey, the DESI survey. And this dome hosts a telescope which was actually built about 50 years ago. So it's an old telescope, but telescopes are timeless. And this one was built to last, and it was built almost like a battleship and can host very massive instruments. So here's a little movie that shows the telescope operating during a single night. It's sped up, of course. And it's a moonlit night on one of the nights I was at the telescope. And you can see it tracking objects through the sky, the dome rotating through the night. And we do this every single night now for DESI, and we will continue to do this for 5 years, modulo the vicissitudes of weather and when we have to, service the instrument and things like that. But this is a project that will continue essentially until 2026, when we will have finished mapping about 30 million galaxies, about 10 million stars, and create a pretty unprecedented map of the universe. So in this talk, my goal is to provide you a very broad overview of the arc of this project and describe where we are today. I don't have a lot of technical details, but I'm happy to discuss them if there are any questions afterwards. So the main summary is on this slide. DESI is a precision cosmology experiment. So that means that we're going to measure the rate of expansion of the universe at very high accuracy. And it began its main survey in May of this year, and it's operating incredibly well. In fact, as of today, we're already the largest survey in existence. We have collected more galaxy redshifts than all other surveys in history put together. And the DESI data is having a very broad impact on astrophysics, not just on cosmology, as I'll try to touch on later. And like I said, we're hoping to have early results within a year, the results from the first year of our data collection efforts, sometime, hopefully by December of next year. So let me take a step back and try and describe what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. Our universe is made up of stuff that we understand and a lot of stuff that we do not. In fact, one of the great discoveries of this century, or actually in 1998, the end of the last century, was that our level of ignorance is much larger than we previously thought. So we know a lot about certain aspects of the universe. We know a lot about protons, neutrons, the fundamental particles, electrons, the things that make atoms and molecules, and this stuff makes up pretty much everything that we can see. And I literally mean everything. Everything we can touch, see, feel, hear, experience in the world around us is made up of fundamental particles, and we understand that remarkably well. And what is most amazing is that these particles and the way they behave have the same properties across all space and all time. So it's a rather remarkable aspect of physics that what we study on inclined planes on Earth holds in the farthest reaches of the universe. But all of this constitutes only a tiny fraction of the actual energy density in the universe. So all of this material, which we astronomers refer to perhaps slightly inaccurately as baryonic matter, makes up about 4 to 5% of the total energy density. And then there's an additional 26% of the energy density that's something that we don't understand, but we refer to as dark matter. And that behaves kind of like regular matter in the sense that it has gravity, but it doesn't interact with light, and so we really have no way of studying it other than through its gravitational influence. But the remaining 70%, which is the bulk of the universe's energy density in the current epoch, is stuff we have no idea about. It's something that we refer to as dark energy. It pervades all of space right now. And it has exactly the opposite effect of gravity. It exerts a negative pressure trying to push the universe apart and causing the universal expansion, which started at the Big Bang, to accelerate, to get faster and faster. It's very unexpected. And DESI's purpose is to try and address this issue. So whenever we're sort of faced with a problem we can't understand, we sort of sit around and scratch our heads for a while, and then we say, well, let's get back to basics and try and see what we can actually measure and see if we can understand this any better. And astronomy is a science that's very much driven by exploration and discovery. Every group of humans always thinks it understands the universe in great detail until we discover something which makes us realize we don't understand it at all. So, usually the approach astronomers have had to science in general is to look out and learn what is out there. There's only one experiment that we have to study, which is the entire universe, and so we're inside it, and so we can only observe that one experiment. And then we try and measure and characterize its properties as well as we possibly can. And then once we do that, we try and create a physical model of what has happened and see if we can use that to predict. And DESI is trying to focus on the second step, which is to measure and characterize the universal expansion as well as we possibly can. And so how do we do that? Our 5-year mission is to measure this expansion history over the last 10 billion years. Dark energy began to appear in the universe about 8 billion years ago and grow in strength since then. And also to map the changing cosmic web of galaxies. So galaxies are not distributed completely homogeneously. They form clusters and voids and so on in space. And DESI is going to map this out in great detail over time. And so it will do this by observing 30 million galaxies, 10 million stars, and about a third of the sky. Pretty much the third of the sky that we can see looking out of our galactic plane into the universe in the northern hemisphere, because that's where the Kitt Peak telescope is located. So the reason why DESI can do this is because of a kind of remarkable feature that has been imprinted on the matter distribution in the universe. And this started in the early universe when the fundamental particles, the electrons and the protons and photons, the carriers of light, were all trapped behaved like a single fluid in this primordial soup. It was sort of a glowing primordial soup, if you will. The photons could move it very far because they would run into an electron and get scattered, et cetera. So the matter and the photons were all tied together in this soup. And there were sound waves created in this soup simply because of these density inhomogeneities in the early universe. So here's a picture of the temperature map of the universe at a redshift of 1,000. So it's a snapshot of the sky, if you will, at a time when the universe was only 380,000 years ago. And this is the time when the first hydrogen atoms are formed, when protons combine with electrons, and the universe suddenly becomes transparent to light as a result of this transition. So the background sky is extremely smooth. It's smooth to 1 part in 10,000. It's smoother than this table. It's definitely smoother than this Macintosh computer surface. But it does have small fluctuations in density, and those fluctuations are at the level of 1 part in 10,000. And it is these little fluctuations that have the imprint of this feature I'm going to talk about. So if we zoom in to a part of this diagram, you will see a little detail. And I've drawn circles here, and the circles here are roughly the size of about 1 degree. And even with your naked eye, you can see that the distribution is not totally random. There's kind of a mottled pattern, a grid-like structure that your eye is beginning to pull out. It's not very clear, but it's there. And in fact, when we analyze this map mathematically, we indeed find that there's a very strong peak that shows that structures exist on this scale of about 1 degree. And these structures are due to sound waves in the early universe. So when the material in the early universe is all in this plasma form, there might be a slight excess of matter here, and that begins to draw the rest of the matter towards it because of gravity. But the photons are tied to it, and they don't like to be compressed, and so they push out against the matter. And so they bounce out and send a little ripple through, a spherical ripple through the medium. And as it expands, then there's less material and can fall back again. And so you get these oscillations of sound in this early universe. But the photons are released miraculously at this point where the universe is cooled enough for hydrogen to form. And then the photons flow freely out and form that map we were talking about. But when they flow out, the matter is left in those little spherical regions. There's slightly more matter in those regions than there is in other parts. And so galaxies form with slightly more probability there. And so amazingly, this feature is imprinted on the galaxy distribution over the entire universe. So we can measure the scale, both in the cosmic microwave background map I was showing you and in the galaxy distribution. And the size, the physical size of this feature is the same, which is amazing. It forms a standard ruler, essentially. And if we place rulers at different distances and we know their length, we can see how small they get as they get further and further away from us, and we can immediately determine their distance. And DESI is using this sound horizon, the maximum outer region where the sound waves could travel, as the standard ruler, comparing it to the measurements we have from the microwave background, and thus mapping the expansion history over billions of years, to sub% accuracy. So it's quite remarkable. We've never done this at this level of precision before. But we had to start somewhere. We didn't know where all the galaxies were, so we decided that we would start with a new imaging survey of the sky, and that's something that I actually, with my colleagues, began when I was a Radcliffe Fellow here 8 years ago. So even though I had proposed to do lots of other things, one of the most interesting things I did was to write a proposal to start taking images of the sky in preparation for DESI. So our team did that. We used the Kitt Peak telescope, telescopes actually on Kitt Peak, as I was mentioning earlier. So not just the Mayall telescope, which now runs DESI, but also the Bok telescope, which is a small telescope that belongs to the University of Arizona's Stewart Observatory. And we used both of those in the Northern Hemisphere. And we used the Blanco telescope, which is another old 4-meter telescope in the Southern Hemisphere. So these are telescopes that don't cost very much to operate. They were built a long time ago, and they're thought of as not being particularly useful for astronomy. But they're driving the solution to one of the most important problems in astrophysics right now, despite the fact that they're relatively inexpensive to operate. So this project used not only new data from these telescopes, but also data from the archives that we had at NOIRLab, where I work. And so it's a combination of multiple new surveys plus crowdsourced data, if you will, that sat in our archives. And this resulted in a new 3-color survey that covered a third of the sky, or actually half of the sky, including the third of the sky that we were going to target with the DESI and MAOL instrument. The survey went 15 million times fainter than what you can see with your naked eye. And the catalogs contain about 2 billion sources of galaxies and stars. But one of the things that was very important to us when we did the survey was that because we were using public telescopes and publicly funded research that was all publicly funded by the National Science Foundation and by the Department of Energy's Office of Science, it was important to us that all of this was done in a public way. So we made the data public as we took it, we made the catalogs public as we built them, and all of the data are available for anyone to look at the websites listed here. So this one in particular is the one that's www.legacysurvey.org/viewer, has a way for anyone to sort of browse the universe, to see the data, to explore it, and citizen scientists have been finding all kinds of cool things in it and so on. It's really been fun to see that happen. Of course, projects like this can't happen without a huge number of people, and it was all largely a volunteer effort for the people who actually did the work. But in addition to that, there's the whole infrastructure that exists to keep observatories running, to build the instruments, the committees that allow you to get the time on the telescope and to support your travel and to keep it clean, and your family members who go crazy while you're doing this in the process and so on. So it's really kind of made me appreciate the effort that it takes to do something like this. But the data from this new survey have started to influence many different branches of astrophysics. Other groups started doing their own things with it, and this is just one example. There were about 1,000 new gravitational lenses found just from the imaging data alone by researchers. And the data have also been used now to do what we wanted to do with it, which is to select the galaxy targets that DESI will study. And so here's a picture of the large-scale distribution of the galaxies sort of in the nearby universe. So these are things that are only at redshifts of a few tenths. So look-back times of maybe 1 billion years or so. But you can already see from this map, so the colored regions here show the region that we're going to try and target. The lighter colored regions are where the galaxy density is higher, and the darker colored regions are where there are voids. And you can already see that this is a very mottled map. It's showing you the cosmic web as it was a few billion years ago. So it's rather remarkable to just see this on the sky, even without doing anything else. So of course we did this all for DESI, and these are the bright galaxies. These are things that are not 15 million times fainter than what our eye can see, but only a mere 150,000 times fainter than our eye can see. But you can, you get a sense that the galaxy distribution has patterns imprinted upon it, connected to this distant cosmic sound. So meanwhile, while we were finishing the survey, we were also installing DESI on the MAOL telescope. And this was a big effort. It required people from 69 different partner institutions spread across 4 continents, and a really excellent team that was able to work on new optics for the telescope, for new top ends that would hold this massive instrument. It really was kind of wonderful to see it all coming together and working so well, and teams of people internationally collaborating and working so well. But the heart of DESI is its ability to place tiny little fibers that are about the thickness of your hair on images of little galaxies at the focal plane of the telescope. And it does that using about 5,000 robotic fiber positioners. So there are little things here, which you can see in this slide, that are spread out across the entire focal plane. And they all move because with these tiny little motors that are only about 4 millimeters in size, and they do so very quickly, and they can position this optical fiber, which is the thickness of your hair, to about 5 micron accuracy. So something like about 1/30th the width of that hair. So it's rather remarkable to see all of that working so well. This next slide. So we had first light with only a small portion of these fibers back in 2019 in October. And we pointed at the Triangulum galaxy in the Great Galaxy in Triangulum, and you can see it sort of an image of it here. And we were able to detect light and get spectra of it and so on. It was really fun to be up there when that happened, because you're seeing light come through the entire complex system with 350,000 moving parts and so on, and it all sort of works, which was really wonderful to see. Then, of course, we had to shut down in March of 2020 because of the pandemic. And during that period of time, we actually wrote a lot of software. We tried to fix a lot of things that we had found in those first month or few months of operation. And so when we came back in November, it was almost a better instrument just from that delay. People worked very hard during that time. And where we started our survey on May 14th or so of this year. And we've been operating with summer shutdowns for the monsoon and a few repairs, almost continuously otherwise. And here's a little, I mean, it's hard for me to describe how revolutionary this is without sort of showing you a few pictures. So here's a picture of the Coma cluster of galaxies. And it's sort of dominated by 2 big elliptical galaxies and lots of other little galaxies around. And there were maybe, at most 1,000 velocities known for these galaxies. So 1,000 of the galaxies had been observed. And in basically one night, almost every dot there is showing you a galaxy with a measured redshift. This is the same region of the sky, zoomed out some more. And every dot here represents a galaxy with a measured redshift. And I'm going to sort of try and turn this box around so you can see both on the sky and through the depth of space how these points are distributed. This is only a small region. It's about 3.8 billion light years from the bottom to the top. And you can already see that the galaxy distribution, even in space, is not uniform. It forms sheets and filaments and voids and little clumps and so on. And this is the signature we're essentially looking for. Of course, it's not just 2 little pillars that we've pointed at. Each one of those is a different DESI field, but we'll have the entire third of a sky covered with this kind of data. So DESI, redshifts are pouring in. On a good night, we get more than 100,000 redshifts per night. And the data reduction team has a motto, which is redshifts by breakfast. So we wake up every morning and I go to my computer, breakfast on the West Coast, because we're observing in Arizona. The data get transferred to the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, where they're processed. And by breakfast time there, we have the 100,000 redshifts that came from the previous night. It's really remarkable, and they're distributed to everyone in the collaboration. 600 people in Asia and Europe and the U.S. and so on. So the redshifts are pouring in. We've already collected more than 6 million redshifts and about 1.5 million stars, and about 1/7 of the survey is complete just in these first few months of observing. But DESI is going to have an impact well beyond cosmology. I mean, it's going to, in addition to just, unlike a lot of particle physics experiments where one is trying to find a certain interaction, and so a lot of you're sifting through a lot of data that is not that useful to find that one event. In astronomical projects and cosmological projects, we're getting new data for every single one of these galaxies. And so all of the data is incredibly useful, not just for the project that we're trying to do, but for all the other astronomers on the planet. And so, we'll have the largest spectroscopic samples of galaxies and quasars and lenses and stars of different types, et cetera. But I'm hoping, most importantly, that whenever we go out and do these explorations, there'll be something new that we'll find. And it'll be disappointing if we don't find something new. But right now, we're at the end of a fire hose of data, and we're just trying to get used to figuring out how to process that. So currently, we're also looking beyond the first 5 years to, at the end of 5 years, DESI is still going to be the premier instrument on the planet for doing these kinds of surveys and for astronomical exploration. And so we're thinking about what we're going to do with it for the next 5 years, whether it'll be trying to understand the earliest inflationary phases of the universe, mapping out the structure of our galaxy in colossal details so that we really understand its evolutionary and fossil history. And of course, none of this would really have been possible without this amazing collaboration that we have. It involves 69 participating institutions. The instrument was funded in large part by the Department of Energy's Office of Science, and the telescope was built by the National Science Foundation in the 1970s, which we wouldn't be doing this project without that initial investment. And there have been several private institutions and so on that have come in and provided funding for this project. But it is really amazing that we are at this juncture in the universe where we're here, we're able to build these instruments that run almost automatically at some level and produce this remarkable ability to map the universe and sort of understand its origins. So I'm really looking forward to the next 5 years. I certainly hope we'll find a lot of new things, but whatever it is, it's already a lot of fun.
You're using land telescopes. So we have space telescopes and land telescopes. What is the advantage of the land telescope for projects like this, please?
Sure, that's a great question. Let me just address one point that you made earlier about the public nature of the data. Yeah. So the imaging survey that we did is entirely public already. The data that we're getting for DESI isn't yet. It's still part of the collaboration, and the reason is it's so good we can already see the cosmological signatures we're looking for, and we don't just want to release that after having done all this work until the people who've worked on it so hard can get to write up those initial results. So we are planning to have periodic public worldwide releases of the DESI data, but that will not happen for another year. But the imaging data is already available for schools and anyone else to use. And there will be small amounts of data coming out from DESI that will be available for educational purposes. And in fact, all the data that we took before we started the main survey, that will be released sometime by summer of next year. And that's going to have a huge impact because it's already so much better than a lot of the data that does exist. About this issue of the international aspect of the project, I think some of these projects really are, can only be done in some ways as international projects. There's so much expertise and intelligence and cleverness and so on all over this planet that unless you really think of us all as one connected whole, it's very hard to really benefit from that diversity of ideas and so on, and do something that's really significant. So I feel very strongly that that's an important aspect of this. I mean, it is true that a significant amount of the funding has come out of the US agencies, but I think they have been remarkably wise to allow for this large collaboration and internationally spread collaboration to work together and not say that it has to be divided by national grounds. Now, coming to your question, sorry, that was a long aside. But coming to your question about land telescopes on Earth, this would have been a very hard project to pull off in space. It's not that we would not have been able to do it, but there were two huge advantages. One was we could make use of technology. We were developing technology almost right up to the point where we started installing this instrument. And we have since repaired a bunch of things and figured out that, oh, this piece of electronics would be better if we designed it like this. We could just take it to the telescope and put it on there, and things are now working even better than they were a few months ago. That aspect is almost impossible to do in space. We sort of did it with the Hubble Space Telescope, but at great expense. So that's one, our ability to reach and use a telescope, use human effort that can be relatively untrained to come and help us observe, collect the data, et cetera. The second aspect is the cost. The entire project costs less than $100 million, which is, yes, it is a lot of money, but it's a tiny fraction of what what other large space-based projects cost.
Right.
And you know, those projects, there's a reason why we make those investments, because it's hard to do things, certain kinds of things from the ground. I mean, we would never be able to get images of the quality of James Webb Space Telescope or the Hubble Space Telescope, you know, over the fields of view that we will, by doing such things from the ground. But ground-based observatories are remarkably inexpensive to operate. They're easily accessible, and this one was built like a battleship. We would never have been able to launch it into space if we tried, because it's just so heavy. But it allows us to put immense instruments on them and operate them, you know, to very high precision. So those are the and we can fix them, and we can fix them at for relatively little cost, and we can renew them continuously. So all of those things are extremely beneficial.
Very helpful to know. You really need both, I guess, but there are real advantages to doing a project like this on ground. Yes,
absolutely.
Right. That's
and
great.
You know, even for the Hubble Space Telescope, and I'm sure for the James Webb, the support that large ground-based observatories will provide will be invaluable. So, you know, things like the Keck Observatory or the European Very Large Telescope instruments in the Southern Hemisphere, et cetera, they're all going to be critical to supporting the data and sort of allowing us to understand things that James Webb or Hubble have uncovered.
You need the whole realm. That's very interesting. I have one more thing is to ask about the dark energy. You explained a bit there that, you know, it's you have the expansion at the beginning of the universe. Is it true that it's sort of stabilized and then took off again, and now we are at this accelerated expansion, meaning it's going faster and faster? Are you hoping to get an answer to that aspect?
We hope so. It's a very difficult problem. So there were actually two phases of very rapid, of strange expansions, I should say. Right after the Big Bang, we went through a very sudden inflationary phase. And we don't exactly know why that happened. But in the first 10 to the minus 30th of a second, we went from, you know, if you imagine a millimeter, we suddenly blew that up to 10,000 light years.
Yeah.
Just like that. I mean, not even like that, right? In 10 to the minus 30th of a second, right? It's just a tiny amount of time. That's what made the universe so smooth and uniform, with the exception of these tiny bumps that I was talking about earlier. Then the universe sort of it was expanding, but the universe contained matter in it. I mean, all of us, the galaxies, et cetera, the dark matter. And all of that exerts gravity. And so the universal expansion is essentially slowing down slightly as a result of the stuff that's inside it. But all of a sudden, about 8 billion years ago, something happens where that slowing down begins to stop. And then by the time we get to 6 billion years ago, it's beginning to accelerate. And that's the part that we don't really understand. So we don't know whether it's really some new thing that has appeared that is responsible for creating a negative pressure in the universe, or whether it's something fundamentally different in our understanding of gravity. So, you know, Einstein's equations, which are our current theory of gravity, the general theory of relativity, is remarkably predictable. It explains tiny little things that happen all across on scales of our solar system. It explains the orbit of Mercury. It explains, we can send satellites out of our solar system now, at very high accuracy using those equations. It seems to explain how the galaxy rotates, as long as we include dark matter. It explains how the galaxies move in space and time, as long as we include dark matter. But on these very large scales, it even has a term in the equations that allows us to predict this expansion. Oh. We don't know why it's there. And Einstein, in fact, called that aspect of his solutions a big mistake. Yeah. He put it in there to explain he wanted a steady state universe, and he put that fudge factor in there. And amazingly, it's that fudge factor that seems to be driving, seems to correctly predict what's happening now. Now, we have a predictive theory. We don't understand it. So, I told you we went through the steps of look and see what we can learn, try and measure it as precisely as you can, and have a predictive theory. Well, we have number 3. We just don't understand why it's there. Right. And so the idea is that DESI, by measuring how we transitioned from this earlier stage of the universe to this universal expansion, and to see whether the universal expansion, this acceleration has been constant, growing, whether it has wiggles in it, that's the kind of level of precision we need to get to in order to investigate this matter further. Right. Whether we'll have an explanation at the end of that, I don't know, but that's time will tell.
But you'll be able, with this project, to show that whatever it is, that movement, that in more detail at least. And just one more thing, then, is that what is meant by anti-gravity? This is because it's inexplicable, it seems, this acceleration at this scale.
Your guess is as good as mine. Oh, I mean, it does. This negative pressure in the universe essentially acts like a negative gravity because it's pushing everything apart. But it's not. What it actually is definitely beyond my understanding.
Right. But it thumbs its nose at gravity. It just disregards completely.
Thumbs its nose at gravity.
Right. That is just one of the most interesting issues out there, and it has to do with scale, evidently. A lot of things, I imagine. I think this is so exciting, this project. What a time to be an astronomer.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to be part of this effort, I think. I've really enjoyed being part of this effort.
I am sure. But you're getting data just constantly and so on, but also the idea that it's a gift to the whole human race. It will change our perspective and everything. It's just a huge contribution. Dr. Dey, thank you ever so much. This was really interesting.
Thank you. This was
and best of luck.
I really enjoyed doing this. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you.